actually it's Valentine's Day, so maybe it's a very romantic day to be riding. Hello everyone, my name is Tara East. I'm a writer, blogger, YouTuber, and the author of the mystery novel Every Time He Dies. And in this week's video, I'm going to talk about the illusion of a writing retreat. So to give a little bit of context, initially this video was going to be a very sort of atmospheric, cozy video about me doing a self-run, I should say, a self-run writing retreat at a cottage that I was house sitting over the weekend. So I got all this great footage of the house, which I'll definitely show here because I think it's really beautiful. The little cottage is nestled inside a rainforest, which was beautiful to walk through. But I had all these grand plans, particularly on the Sunday of this weekend. I was going to take the whole day to dive deep into the new fantasy book that I'm writing. And the idea was that I was going to have a full writing day. So I was going to start with some reading in the morning, and then I was just going to plow into the manuscript and write as much and for as long as I wanted to. I wanted to really dive deep into the book. Now, a few things happened. One was, and this is probably the most important thing, it was ridiculously hot on Sunday. It was 38 degrees, and mind you, I'm from a town that was typically 40 degrees in summer, but it was 38 degrees. I think I've become a bit climatized to my very soft 25, 26 degrees in the town that I currently live in. But the cottage that I was staying in, it's not insulated and there was no air con. And there was no breeze that day, so it was really hot. It was quite an uncomfortable day. And I was also just not really in the mood to write. And it's so funny because I can usually push through that really easily. And honestly, the first 5 or 10 minutes of most writing sessions can be difficult, and then you kind of get into it, you get into the flow. Now that uncomfortableness, that tension can maybe last even half an hour before you find your flow state. But I sat down and I started working on my novel, and it felt like white knuckling, and I could not get into it. All I wanted to do was read and relax, and it felt like work. And now that is really unusual for me because so often, like I just said, eventually you hit that flow state, but it just wasn't happening. And I think one of the main reasons it wasn't happening was because I had put so much pressure on the day. I was like, I am in this gorgeous setting, in this super cute cottage. I've got the entire day to write. I don't have to prep any meals. Everything's been done. I didn't have any work-related duties that I needed to tend to. The day was completely my own. I could write for the entire day. And I think, one, I was exhausted because last week had been a huge, ridiculous week. Two, it was very hot and physically uncomfortable. And three, I had put so much pressure on the day that then I just sort of choked.
Let's hear that one more time.
I had put so much pressure on the day that then I just sort of choked. And I think this also comes to the illusion that sometimes us writers can fall into, that we need to run away to a cabin in the woods, that we need to be as far away from other people, our jobs, all of the domestic duties that come with running a house, all the responsibilities of full-time work, everything like that, that we need to exit our lives in order to create. Now, here I was in the perfect circumstances in most ways, minus the temperature. In most ways, I was in the perfect circumstances and I couldn't get any writing done, which definitely leads me to the point of other things need to be in place. You need to be well rested. You need to feel physically comfortable. You need to have the energy to create because it takes energy to create. And that's the thing, even though we may love writing, even though writing may be our passion, our hobby, or our full-time or part-time job, it's not to discount the fact that it takes energy to create something out of nothing, even when it's fun, even when it's mentally stimulating, even when it's satisfying, even when it's rewarding, it still takes energy. Because the thing is, writing is constant decision making, and decision making is incredibly fatiguing. Now, the other thing I wanted to add here, and I've sort of highlighted it already, is the pressure I put on myself to write all day. And I know I've spoken about this in other videos, but sometimes setting those big goals, I'm going to write all day, I'm going to write 2,000 words, you're kind of setting yourself up to fail in so many ways because that's intimidating. If you have 8 hours to write, all of a sudden you feel like you need to really do something with those 8 hours. You really need to use those 8 hours and make the most of them. If you have 8 hours to write, then you better write 2,000 words. Hell, you better write 4,000 words because you have this much time available to you. But if you say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to write for half an hour. One, that is way more manageable. Two, it lowers the stakes. You don't have to write 2,000 words in half an hour. You can't write 2,000 words in half an hour. Maybe you can hit 500 words, and that's enough. That's a realistic goal. And also, might I add, 30 minutes is a much more realistic goal in your everyday life. So that's sort of part one of this video. I had the perfect circumstances to have a really great writing day. I was in a cozy atmospheric setting. I was away from my house and all of the duties and responsibilities and distractions that exist in houses. Oh, I should also add, the cottage I was staying at didn't have internet, so I didn't have any of the usual distractions that I would have at home. I couldn't quickly Google something or get lost on YouTube or go down the rabbit hole of research because I didn't have any internet. And it's so funny because what I ended up doing on Sunday was I just had a reading day. I pretty much read most of the day and then I did a little bit of editing work on my dissertation. But that was just like formatting, boring stuff. There was nothing creative about it. But now what I want to talk about is what happened this morning. So today is a Tuesday. It's a very unromantic day to be writing. Actually it's Valentine's Day, so maybe it's a very romantic day to be writing. So what happened this morning? I got up, I had breakfast, I took my dog for a walk, and then I decided to go to the cafe that I always go to whenever I want to have a cappuccino and do some writing in the morning, which is by far one of my favorite things. So I sat down at the cafe and within the space of an hour, I wrote 2,000 words. A totally ordinary day. It didn't take me 8 hours. It took 60 minutes and it cost $6 for a pot of tea. Might I also add that I could have hotspotted my phone. I could have gotten distracted online and on the internet, but I didn't. And all of this is to say that I think sometimes we just fall into the trap of magical thinking. If all of the circumstances around me were perfect, then I would be able to write. And the truth is, when the circumstances are perfect, the pressure to produce is too great and it could kill your creativity. And also, it is very rare, that the circumstances in your life will ever be perfect. And instead, you need to just find ways to write in the corners of your life and to make time for writing whenever and however you can. Now let's jump to some B-roll from this weekend. Alright, those are my thoughts for today's video, which is very rambly and unstructured. I'm sorry. Now, if you have any comments you'd like to add, please write them below because I'd love to hear them. What do you think about this idea of writing retreats being necessary for your creative process? Do you long to go on a writing retreat? If you have, did you find it really successful and useful? Or have you found it doesn't really work out? I'd love to know, so please let me know. If you'd like even more writing advice, you can of course check out the other videos on this channel or go to taraeast.com and dive into the archives. While you're there, please consider joining my email newsletter. When you do, I'll send you a free gift, woohoo! and you'll get a newsletter in your inbox every single Thursday morning, including a note by me, as well as some resources that I've recently loved and think you will too, some links to that week's blog and video, and some other tidbits that I don't share anywhere else. Thank you so much for being here again for this random, weird video. Stay safe, stay calm, and keep writing, because the world actually does need more books.